Hello, everyone. Today, we have the absolute pleasure of being joined by John Washington, who is the founder of the Innovation Garage. John, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing well. So thank you so much for having me.
Lily, it's a pleasure to have you on today. John, really excited, and the pleasure is all ours. So, what we want to do is hopefully have an amazing conversation. We all can learn a thing or two and really understand who John is and what makes him the man he is. So, without further ado, are we happy to make a start?
Yeah, it sounds
Let's
great.
do it. Let's deep dive. So, John, if you can take us, I guess, to the early stages of your career, where it all got started, and where you got the bug of business and entrepreneurship, and maybe if you could walk us through the journey you've been on to get to the position you're in, perhaps the highs and some lows, um,
Yes.
which would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So just by way of university background, I'm a degreed mechanical engineer. So that's my technical education. But very interestingly, the entrepreneurship side and having secondary businesses was a family thing. So yeah, my father was actually a factory worker. He worked in the steel industry and the automotive industry. And from a very young age, he had a couple of, businesses, what we would call today side hustles. And so there was always this very strong entrepreneurial spirit. And, I have other relatives as well that had started their own businesses. So this was always kind of a thing just in my family is, you might have a standard 9 to 5 or a 7 to 3 if it was a factory gig. And you might need some things just to, help you through the cycles of, working in a factory, right? If there's a downturn or a layoff or something. And so I just observed from a very young age that that was very helpful for, folks that were trying to make a living and support their families.
Got it. Amazing. And what does your journey post that really look like? How did you really get into business? How did you, I guess, get things up and running? What does that
Yeah.
whole process look like?
Yeah. So, the career arc is, as we talked about, before in the run up to this interview was big company and then small company or startup. And so it was all very organic. I mean, I graduated university and I went to work for a very large manufacturing company and I stayed there for a period of time. But what I started to notice at a young age was just the challenges within large organization cultures. And so that career arc, went from a large company to a startup. I had met somebody that needed some engineering support, and their education background was actually they were a professional musician. They played in the local
Oh, wow.
city orchestra. But
Wow.
what they loved to do was they loved to code. And that was a very interesting thing, in that I started to see a lot of people that would maybe have a certain university background or educational background, but there was some other passion that they had that was really driving them. So I had an opportunity to support that person while I was working in a large corporation. And then it came to a point where I said, this seems to be really interesting. So that was my first startup. And I was probably like 23 or 24 years old,
Wow.
after university. Then I went to another large company, big, publicly traded, did a lot of really cool product design and development. And a couple years into that, the organization was doing some adjustments or right sizing or downsizing. And I was asked by some of the leadership there, they wanted to spin out a product development company. And that again seemed very intriguing, was to, be part of something that, you're kind of their, boots on ground, kind of first people in. And stayed there for a few years. And then, family things come around and, you get married and you want to have children and you might need a little bit more stability. So I did a long stint in a publicly traded company and started as a development engineer, moved into project management and then supply chain eventually. And what was really unique about that was I was there almost 15 years, but every 2 years I had a different assignment. If there was something new that needed to be done, that was something that gravitated my interest and kind of my intrinsic motivation. And so probably 7 different assignments over that 15-year period, but each of it had these elements of startup. And then at the tail end of that, there was the executive path that was looming for me. And I got the urge to kind of start something on my own. And so I had all this experience over that career arc that I would say I had some technical street cred, had some capabilities, and then had some confidence that I could at least give it a shot and see what happens. And so I started the Innovation Garage back in 2000. Since that time, we've worked with over 100 different organizations, and we really support them in areas of strategy, innovation, and supply chain. So that's been the journey up to this point.
Amazing. What a journey, John. Now, if you look back on it now, right, I know there's some ups and some downs, but what do you think was the most important part of the journey that actually helped you become the person you are today? And what challenge or perhaps difficult are you really thankful for that you went through because it molded you into the entrepreneur you are today?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is we all have a fear of failure, right? We want to be successful. But I think all of those different experiences, the different people I met, the different cultures and demographics and age ranges of people, what I started to see was there was a certain population of those folks that just weren't very happy in the job that they had, right? And
Yeah,
I would look at that and go, well, I don't want that to be me when I'm at a certain age. And I think also from the engineering and technical background, there were a lot of problems that had to be solved, right? If you're inventing or creating something that never exists before, there's going to be tons of problems, and the ability to kind of be very agile and adapt to problems and look for ways to create small scale experiments to solve those problems builds your confidence. So I think all of those little nuances over a period of time were what kind of set the impetus to start, the Innovation Garage.
got it. Amazing, amazing. And so, what does your role look like now in the business? Are you very much focused on growth and taking things to the next level? Are you still very much focused with the team and building that side of things? And what does a typical day look like for yourself, Sean?
Yeah, so one of the things that is kind of important for my background is just I like diversity of experiences, right? So when I started the business back in 2012, I didn't really have any sales background. But I had worked with people in other organizations and kind of through my career arc that I picked up pieces of, who were ideal sellers and how do they position things. So a typical day could be working on the front end of the pipeline if there's new opportunities to pursue. And with my background, I'm able to kind of move into different spaces as well. So if a client needs technical engineering support, that's a piece that we can provide. If they need project or program management support, or even strategy development, or they need to build capability within their team, these are all elements, I'm very much an active role in all the deployments. Our business model is pretty unique in that we're pretty small consulting practice, but we've got a really nice bench of additional resources, developers, strategists, engineers, designers, that if we need to scale up, we can do that. And
Absolutely.
that's been a great model for us. It wasn't really to kind of have a mindset of having a certain permanent employee team size and then we'll start to scale. And it's been, really organic. And I think as we've talked about before, I love the organic nature of it. The deals are going to take some time. It's going to be based on, how aware the potential client is. Are they able to, engage with us, and are they willing? So these are all kind of things that we look at in our deal pipeline.
Amazing, amazing. Now, I guess, John, if we can come on to market side of things, right? So, what are some industry trends and market shifts are you seeing currently in the industry, in the nation, in the landscape, and how do you think they're going to pan out over the next few months and years to come? And what are some, I guess, some tricky areas that business owners need to be aware of to avoid themselves, getting caught out? How can people navigate the constant change that's happening within the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest one that's impacting any organization right now is artificial intelligence, AI.
Absolutely.
And we've worked with a number of clients on kind of early AI based initiatives or just some basic education on AI. And I think that this is something that can provide value, but it also can be very destructive, I think, potentially, depending on how it's embraced and adopted. And the analysis I would make here is that, a lot of folks are looking at AI based tools that will help them fix either a broken process or a broken technology or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And what we've always seen is that it's kind of process, people, and then technology.
Yep.
And so there's very much a very intriguing period, right? GPT has been around for about 2 years or 3 years or so, and you're seeing it being used in so many different areas. And Microsoft has a tool, Google has a tool, X has a tool as well, right? Formerly Twitter. And the primary concern that I see is that what's happening is people are starting to migrate away from their own critical thinking and rely on these tools. And they don't really have a good understanding of what's under the hood, if you will, right? So it's really important to understand what's the AI model, what's the, if it's an LLM, learning language model, what's it based on, what's its inputs. And we really encourage our clients to be a little bit guarded about just casually adopting those and thinking everything's going to be great, right? Because
Yeah.
the human element is not going to go away. And I think that that's a real important piece of this, that you're going to need the typical relationship skills to interact with people. Most folks are going to want a human connection. And you can use these tools, provided you don't give up what we might call our old analog methods, right?
Yeah,
I think
the
it could be
basics.
an amplifier. But that's the biggest trend that I see. You know, I don't think AI is going to be a cure-all for everything. And, like I said, we don't want to outsource our individual critical thinking on matters, our ability to do research. Those tools are helpful because they may get you to a right path, or they may take you down a path that you really don't want to be on. So you really got to be careful about those things, I think. And, I think that human connection and support is going to be really important as you go forward.
Absolutely. Very well said, John. And I wanted to really get your thoughts on, I guess this trend has been massive last 10, 15 years. And I guess it's the previous AI, what it is now. That's social media, right? Social media, online presence, digital presence,
Yeah.
where perhaps a few years ago, people didn't really bother. So what is your overall take on social media? How important has social media been to the success of your business? And again, what are some ways that people can actually get caught out when it comes to social media? How can people actually navigate it properly? And do you think it's an overall net positive or is it a net negative?
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is where I would put the consultant's hat on and say it depends. So, from a social media perspective, I mean, we've been on platforms ever since the business was started back in 2012. And I think for the type of business that we have, right, we're a consulting practice, it provides awareness. And if you've got a nice network, and we utilize a lot of LinkedIn primarily because that's the primary marketing tool. We've got presence on the other sites, but a lot of folks on those other sites really aren't going to look for a consulting practice. So
Yeah.
LinkedIn's our best tool for that. What's nice about it is if you do build out a network, you build out connections, and our model is very simple. If we meet someone, if we're in a physical meeting, we might, even do the classic exchange of business cards, and we'll follow up with a LinkedIn invite. And what happens over time, I mean, we've been on that platform for a long time. You build out a pretty rich network. And what's nice about something like LinkedIn is it follows people from their organization they're at, and if they change jobs, right, you still maintain that connection. So it's really nice. And from a presence perspective, it's posting a few times a week and making sure that you're commenting on good news in people's networks. I think that it's a very organic type of approach. We've seen more success with what I would call our own network, right? More of, instead of paid promotion, the organic reach is pretty good with a platform like LinkedIn. So people that are interested in what we do or what we're up to, it's a great way to kind of stay connected with them. And also as well, I think just a classic email list is a really great way to maintain touch with people. And you can be more targeted with that. So that's our general approach with social media. For the other platforms like Facebook, Instagram, we're primarily just putting updates up there. That isn't a place where we would typically get our client base from.
Got it. No, that makes sense. Now, I guess looking at all things business, right? What are some areas of business that perhaps are going really well and you're really proud of? And perhaps what are some areas of the business that perhaps you're having some challenges? It could be sales, marketing, operations, client delivery, anywhere, that you feel as though we're doing really well. And perhaps there's some tweaks and refinements to be made, or have you already made them? And what advice would you give to people in a similar position?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we try to do is we look at our strategy on a quarterly basis, strategically kind of pulsing where we want to be versus where we're at, and how are we progressing to those things. One of the things I would encourage, just regardless of anybody listening to this, is really think about, on a quarterly basis, like how are you progressing to kind of your strategic vision? And you know, and then think about ways that you can do small scale experiments to maybe add some technology in there. So maybe it's you want more of a LinkedIn presence, right? Or whatever your preferred social media tool is, you want more presence there. And do some small scale experiments and see if you're getting reach or getting new followers or anything like that, right? So that's kind of the social media piece. One of the things that worked really well for us is around 2018, 2019, we were doing a lot of client education programs that were live.
Oh, okay.
And, and we started to see the need for more of what we call virtual program delivery. So in 2018, 2019, we made a decision to build our own learning management system that allowed this kind of, education program to happen more remotely, where instead of being locked in a conference room for 3 days or something, you could chunk that out over a month period.
Yeah.
That decision allowed the Innovation Garage to survive COVID.
Wow.
Because what happened during COVID, when everyone, and I would say that was our biggest challenges in the business was the COVID period. But we were positioned pretty well to kind of continue with organizations and wanted to do remote and virtual education and engagements virtually. And so that was a big, kind of bet for us, and it paid off pretty well in the context of we were able to kind of go through most of COVID with a lot of the challenges that a lot of other organizations did. We certainly had some downturn in 22 and 23, but that was more of the tail end of that activity. And then by that time, live programs started to come back around, and so we still do most of our education and deployments with our clients virtually. So probably about 75% of it is done virtually.
Amazing.
So, that was a good decision. I think some challenges. We've got a great pipeline. We've got some simple tools that help us to understand who visits our website, and then we can back that into a pipeline for deal flow. One of the biggest challenges is just client decisioning. Sometimes they've got an immediate need, but the leadership team's a little reluctant to get going on it. And so, sometimes that decisioning process can take a while. And, folks will ask, how long does it take you to get an engagement? And I could say it's highly variable. It could be a few weeks to, a couple months or years sometimes, just based on the organization wanting to get the intrinsic motivation to move forward, right? So we've got a lot of variability in that pipeline. And so you need to keep your coffee cup full and keep putting new opportunities in the pipeline.
Absolutely. Very well said. Now, John, what does the future look like? Because obviously the business is doing really well, successful, growing, but I know you probably have some big goals in the vision board for yourself and definitely the business as well as, the team. So what does the next 6 to 12 months look like? And is there particular goals that you're after? Is it impact based and you're more after leaving a legacy? What does really the future look like?
Yeah, I think, for us, what we're always intrigued about is leadership teams that recognize that maybe their employees, their team members, maybe don't have a capability that the leadership team wants them to have.
Got it.
And so those, an ideal client for us is a leader in that organization that says, we want to do X, Y, or Z. And they recognize that maybe they don't have the capability for it. So, we're always looking for those conversations that are kind of that vein. And it's kind of independent of industry. So it could be a small startup, could be a mid-market privately held, it could be a publicly traded. We've got kind of the flexibility and capability to support all of those organizations. So I think for me, really, it's just good conversations with intrinsically motivated leaders is what we're looking for. And then the rest of it will kind of take care of itself. That's been our observation over the last, 13 years or so.
Got it. Amazing. Amazing. And I guess, John, what is the biggest piece of advice you've ever received from perhaps a mentor, business partner, client, team member, or maybe even family that really, really helped you? Or perhaps the biggest lesson you've learned in your journey of entrepreneurship that somebody hearing this now will really benefit from or even change the trajectory of their career?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a few things. I think if you're going to, start something and be the first in to whatever that new thing is, right? You may be able to see something that others around you can't, right? That
Okay.
maybe there's value that could be provided in the marketplace that your peer group, your family may not be able to kind of see and visualize. I think it's important to get people connected with you that encourage you to, chase that thing, whatever that is. It's also super important to have a good structure of support. I'm really blessed that my wife and children, they were aware of what I wanted to do and they were very supportive of that throughout the process. And you really need that encouragement from other folks to carry on. Some lessons I've learned over the years, I think, um, you will likely have emotional swings in your energy level every day, right? You'll have a good morning and there'll be a piece of information that might, be a little bit negative, and you have to adapt to that and just kind of accept the fact that, okay, your mental state and your emotional changes may swing a bit. I think very important to kind of take care of yourself physically, what you eat, exercise, these kind of basic things to give you the energy to keep doing what you want to do. Try to be in the moment as much as possible and really enjoy the journey. I think that's a key thing. And that takes some time. I think a lot of people come in and, if they're leaving a large organization and they're going to start something, they think that it's going to be just, rock and roll from day one. And there's going to be some quiet times. I think that you have to embrace and just, kind of the organic nature, as we mentioned in the conversation, that just be in that moment and being, organic with your timing. And you want to prepare yourself for the wave of activity that's going to come. Right. And
Absolutely.
so you want to position yourself to be ready for that. And I think that that's really important. And, if you were to kind of put that in a quote, it would be, this too shall pass. You'll be up, you'll be down, and that's all part of the journey. And just enjoy all of it. Enjoy all of it.
Wow, amazing. John, thank you so, so much. I've had an absolute pleasure speaking to you today on the podcast. Thank you so much for the insight and the level of detail you've gone through. I hope you've enjoyed the podcast and you've enjoyed the conversation. And I'm sure everybody listening, as well as me, has definitely learned a lot. So massive, massive thank you. Is there any closing comments or final thoughts you might have for anybody listening, clients, team members, anybody in your circle that perhaps you might want to leave them with?
Yeah, I would just say, that for folks that are really interested in, going down this journey, it's very rewarding. You get a lot of opportunities to meet people that you would never meet before, learn things that you would never learn before, and make an impact that's important to you. And I think that, it's always about intrinsic motivation and, how you want to make your own dent in the universe is kind of the way I would say that.
Absolutely. Amazing. Well, John, thank you very much. And thanks to everyone who has tuned in today. We'll catch everyone next time. Bye bye.